Hello and welcome wherever you are joining us from today, and thank you for your interest in CrisisReady and learning how to build a more resilient and sustainable business. I would like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on wherever you are meeting us from today, and acknowledge my respect to elders past, present and emerging. My name's Natasha Montisalvo. I'm from EarthCheck, and we're working with Scenic Regional Council for the delivery of the CrisisReady program. Now, part of that program includes the CrisisReady app, so you can download that from your Google Play or your App Store at any time. So feel free to go and download the app. It will ask you for a code, enter Risk Scenic Rim, and down the bottom as you scroll down, you can sign up for a new account. Now, this app is designed specifically to support what we're going through in the online tutorials and to support you in taking out some of the stress in responding and recovering from a crisis incident. So as we go through each of the different sessions, there are 4 separate sessions that we'll be working through. Each of those will align to a specific part of the CrisisReady app, and you'll be able to follow along that with us as you go. So why are we here? Well, never before has it become more true that we're operating in a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. The challenges that we've faced over the past 18 months, from bushfires to floods to the coronavirus, have impacted tourism in a way that we were not expecting. And so we know now that by arming ourselves to be as prepared as possible means that we can reduce the impact or get our businesses back up and running as quickly as possible after a crisis event. This isn't something that's unique to Queensland or to the Scenic Rim. In fact, every year the World Economic Forum puts out a global risks landscape and identifies and explores the different risks that we're facing. As you can see in the top right-hand corner of this graph here, you'll notice that the likelihood and the impact are measured, and predominantly, the risks that we're starting to see impacting businesses globally are related to climate action failure and the resulting consequences of that, such as biodiversity loss, natural resource crisis, human environmental damage, and the extreme weather that we're also seeing our regions face. For the first time ever, infectious disease was obviously very high on the likelihood and the impact scale as well. And this is the first time really for a long time that we've seen infectious disease rates so highly in reflection of the impacts that corona continues to have on our society. Weapons of mass destruction are also likely to have significant damage to businesses. We've certainly seen that in a number of destinations globally over the past 10 years. Previously, weapons of mass destruction was higher on the likelihood scale, and that has slipped down over the past year, which is positive to see, but we still also need to acknowledge the risks that businesses may face, and particularly within the tourism industry, the impacts that would have on our businesses. Here in Queensland, this is a graph of the significant or major events that have happened from 2006 to 2019. There are over 80 significant weather events on this mapping, and that's only the ones that are deemed significant. There are other smaller events that impact businesses across the state and, of course, within the Scenic Rim region as well. And this ends in 2019. Obviously, 2020, we saw significant bushfires. And 2021 we started to see some isolated incidents as well up and down the coast. So being aware of the impact of these natural disasters is critically important, but also considering non-natural disasters and the impact of other significant crisis events as well is really important. Things like cyber attacks and the pandemic as well. On a more localised level, the Scenic Rim has got its own disaster management dashboard and local disaster management plan. Through pre-planning, we can prepare our community to enhance our resilience to the adverse impacts of any threat. That's a quote within your local disaster management plan by Mayor Greg Christensen from 2017. And it stands as true today as it was then. By pre-planning and preparing our businesses for the impacts of a crisis, we can enhance our resilience, reduce the adverse impact of threats, and hopefully respond quicker than we could previously if we hadn't considered what risks are impacting our business. Tourism as an industry is impacted by systemic risks. It's not just the immediate risk itself that may impact businesses, but because of the complex system that tourism operates within, there can be effects that are distant in time and space as well. So, for example, the bushfires down south caused a significant impact on the Queensland's tourism as well, because our international media identified that the whole of Australia was burning. Whether correct or incorrect, it still has an impact on the way that people perceive our destinations and our tourism experiences and their willingness to travel for to such destinations. We also have a complex network of attractions, accommodation, food and beverage, transportation, infrastructure, and the impacts to one specific subsector of the tourism industry may have significant flow-on effects to other areas of our industry as well. So, for example, for those of you who work with food and beverage, if there was a drought or fire in one of your agriculture regions, then that may have a significant impact on the cost of goods for your organisation, or even the ability for goods to be delivered to your organisation, therefore impacting the way that you deliver your tourism experience and also the way in which our consumers are able to consume their visitor experience as well. With tourism, we also have to contend with the perceived risk as well as the actual risk. As I mentioned, the European media took the whole of Australia being on fire and utilised that messaging over the last bushfire season. But we've also seen it in things like shark attacks. You're actually 5 times more likely to die in your bathtub than you are to be impacted by a shark incident. However, the perception is still a lot higher that the risks are there, and therefore visitors are reconsidering their willingness to travel to certain destinations based on a perceived risk as opposed to an actual risk. So managing that messaging around the actual risks associated with your destination or with your tourism experience are also really important in order to reassure our visitors. We're starting to see a trend post-COVID that visitors are really looking for safety and security as the number one traveller focus. So making sure that that perceived risk is low and that you're spreading strong messaging around how safe your destination is. And that takes a coordinated effort as well. Tourism, by its nature, is a heavily people-oriented industry, which means that we also have an increased likelihood of spreading disease or something along those lines in terms of the way that we're interacting. And again, safety and hygiene continue to be a critical factor as we move forward, particularly after the impacts of COVID-19, reassuring our guests that we are doing everything we possibly can to keep them as safe as possible while they're visitors in our region and in our businesses. In the same way that our people have a negative ability to spread disease or to engage in certain messages, tourism also has a high ability to help foster regional resilience, to support communities post-crisis, and to bring people together in a way that other industries don't have the ability to. In a pre-disaster focus, looking at how we build resilience by ensuring that our staff are our team members are aware of and understand the risks that face our businesses and our communities and what they can do to reduce those impacts within our tourism business has applicability across their own homes and their own communities as well. Meaning that the knowledge sharing that you're doing through this program and through supporting your staff to become more resilient in your business means that they can then take that back to their own places of home, their own families, their own communities, and they can help to build and strengthen those communities as well. We know that tourism employs a significant number of people across the region, and therefore that communication and opening disaster preparedness as a business as usual conversation really helps to build those resilient communities. Tourism also has a really important role to play post-crisis as well, in bringing people back together, in giving them an opportunity to focus on the positives that can exist within their communities, as opposed to the negatives that they've had to ride through. So, for example, events are a particularly good way of bringing people together, drawing communities in and helping them to forget, even for a temporary time period, about the pain that they've been through, but to celebrate the goodness that exists within the communities. Tourism also has a significant number of resources, and they can be useful post-crisis as well, whether it's beds to support displaced families or workers, or whether it's generators that you may have on site or other such resources that you can help support your community recovery, whether it's in cleanup, whether it's in ongoing support through accommodation or through food and beverage offerings, or whether it's that post-crisis bringing people together through activities or events. Often with crisis situations, we often jump straight through to the physical impacts that a crisis may have, whether it's our guest or staff health and safety, or whether it's the damage that we see from cyclones, floods, or fires on our physical infrastructure. But we also need to consider the financial repercussions of a crisis situation as well, whether it's regulatory or legal impacts, or also your ongoing ability to function as a business. Consideration also needs to be given to our reputation of the business and of the broader destination as well. And as I mentioned with the bushfires, that perception of where the destination is and how heavily it's been impacted is really important to consider. So communication becomes critical around reputation, and managing physical and financial risks, or being aware of how to manage those moving forwards, is also really important. We know here in Queensland it's not a case of if a crisis is going to occur, but it's when our next crisis will occur, which is why it's so important to be prepared, to have plans in place. And to have plans in place, which is why we are here today. So over the course of the next 4 videos, what are we going to look at? We're going to look at how you can identify, assess, and minimize your risks, what's involved in a crisis response, who and how you form a crisis response team, and what the roles and responsibilities are within that team. We'll explore the contact hierarchy and how we communicate both internally and externally. And we'll also look at a go pack, what's involved in packing your go pack and where it should be stored and located. As I mentioned, as part of this program, you've got access to your Scenic REM CrisisReady app. And this is designed specifically to support you in a rapid response to whatever comes your way. So before you get into the next couple of videos, make sure that you download that CrisisReady app and that you've got it set up, ready to go on your mobile phone or tablet. So when we're talking about a crisis, it's any situation that has the potential to affect the long-term confidence in an organisation, product or region, and which may interfere with its ability to continue operating normally. Or, as one of our tourism operators here in Queensland said, it's the oh shit moment, which is outside of your personal control, or that panic moment where you're not sure about what to do first or how to respond. And that's why we've utilised our CrisisReady app to take some of that panic out and calm your response to make it as effective as it possibly can be in the time that you have available. Here in Queensland, our coordination of disaster impacts depends on the level of severity of the crisis. If it's a small localised crisis, then it will be handled by our local government, the local disaster management group. And as you can see, as the level of severity increases, the number of organisations in the coordination becomes more intense. So we move from the local to a district, to a state, and to the Commonwealth-led Emergency Management Australia, where the Army may get involved. So we're going to have 4 short videos moving forward that are going to help look at the prevention, so our risk management, our preparedness, how we analyse the impacts to our business and what we do to reduce those impacts, the response and a recovery. And remember that action is the foundation of success. So please make sure that you continue on with the next 4 videos to take a look at each of those different aspects of the crisis management cycle. If you do have any questions that pop up over time, you've got my email address and my phone number here. You'll also find 2 supporting templates on this website as well. So make sure you're making the use of all the resources that are available to you. Good luck, and I look forward to hearing from you.